What a treat this is for me. You know, you all know what's going on or you wouldn't be here. We've already gotten the word out in the last 2 days of how this thing got, well, 2 weeks ago we recreated the event, and then 2 days ago we had to recreate the live stream. So I don't think any of you wandered in and don't know the data, so we're not going to dwell on that. I'm just going to presume you know the spot that we're in. And one of the wonderful things about this whole situation, and it is, I want to say it is wonderful, it has wonderful aspects to it, is that some incredible people have found each other. And a lot of them have found each other because of this guy. Craig Weiler, I would think also, since you've come early to hear him, most of you already know his absolutely fabulous work. He has a wonderful blog. He'll tell you about his blog. And this issue is bigger than TED. And Craig is going to really tell you about the meta issue that TED has given us the opportunity to dialogue about, a real focus on an issue that really is hurting us all in terms of our evolution, in terms of our progress. So here we are with a fabulous stage that inadvertently TED gave us. And so I'm just going to turn this over to Craig, and he's going to recap for you whatever there is that leads to this place that we're at, where we're all in the potential for a huge step for humanity just out of this little beginning. So, Craig Weiler, you're on.
Thank you. When I was preparing for this speech, I kept having people ask me, are you going to be doing any TED bashing? This was important to them because liability concerns and stuff. And that got me to thinking I was going to do a whole recap, but that's not really the issue. This isn't about TED. This is about us. And what I want to do is bring you my experience in research from learning about the culture of what's happening, share this with you and help you understand the whole picture. Now, you might think that this might have been starting about 5, 10, 20 years ago, but this movement actually began, wait for it, 140 years ago. It's been that long. This started with the Society for Psychical Research in England. They began with some of the luminaries of that time. We're talking very educated, very prestigious people began investigating psychic mediums of the time to find out whether there was anything to it. Right behind them came the skeptics, who ignored all of the research and simply began ridiculing them and attacking everything that they were doing. And that's where it starts. Over the intervening years, they continued to do research. The skeptics always came right behind them and attacked it until we got to J.B. Rhine in the 1950s. And what he did was he took the psychical research that was happening and he brought it into the lab. Some of you may have heard of Zener cards. Those are like 5 different cards with different symbols on them that he was using to help understand psychic ability and do methodologic testing on it. He had extremely significant results from it. He was the first one to use meta-analysis and statistics to understand the results that he was getting. And right behind him came the skeptics, trashing everything he did, attempting to ruin his reputation. And he also had one of the researchers that was working with him that faked some results. And of course, this was a huge disaster. And as far as the skeptics were concerned, if you had one person, even though J.B. Rhine outed the guy, nevertheless, the skeptics jumped on this and used it as a reason to trash all the existing research. So then we move forward from there, and now we start to see organized skepticism. This began with the Committee for Skeptical Investigations. This was an organization, actually it was called, CSICOP, Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Right from the start, they were enmeshed in controversy. Their first bit of research that they did ended with a great deal of cover-up and backstabbing, and they ended up having the moderates split from the organization. Fast forward a little bit, and now we have the magician James Randi, who forms the James Randi Educational Foundation, or as we call it, JREF. And he started a $1 million challenge for psychics, basically to ridicule them. At least that's the opinion of the people who are critical of the challenge, including myself. To us, it seems like something like a fundamentalist church creating all the rules and then creating all the rules, completely controlling the challenge, and then saying, well, go ahead, convince us that evolution exists. And finally, a few years ago, they actually admitted that it's a publicity stunt. So all of this stuff has been happening over the years, and as psychical research has gone forward, it's had to bite and claw its way every step of the way. Parapsychological researchers today recommend that students get tenure first before they even attempt to move into parapsychological studies, because they can ruin their careers by even broaching the subject first. Brian Josephson, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, was disinvited to a conference for his interest and outspoken advocacy of parapsychology. And because I'm a blogger, I hear stuff on the side of people having their studies and whatnot not get published because the mainstream won't accept it. And this is kind of the state of affairs that I walked into when I started investigating parapsychology about 5 years ago. This is an enormously difficult field to research because every single positive element you can find has skepticism attached. And when you first start researching this, you have no idea what's real and what isn't. Certainly, Wikipedia is no help at all. If anybody's gone on there and looked for parapsychological research, it really doesn't provide you with anything substantial in terms of, well, the truth. The reason for that is that skeptics have banded together. There's something called guerrilla skepticism. Basically, it's a bunch of obsessive people working on these Wikipedia pages to rewrite them constantly to have a skeptical outlook. And then they refer back to the skeptic's dictionary, which voices the same opinion. So when you look through these Wikipedia articles and you go back, you find all these resources created by and for skeptics. It's an interesting situation. And one of the things you can take from that is they have been getting a whole lot more frantic lately, and way more so in the last 5 years. This has been a real interesting thing because the psychical community, unlike the skeptics, took time to build. People first needed the data, and that data had to get online where everybody could find it. And 5 years ago, there was very little, and now you can find it every place. There are PDF files of studies that you can find online virtually at your fingertips now. People are sharing this information all the time in the comment sections of places like the Huffington Post and local newspapers. And anytime the parapsychological stuff comes up, You now have supporters and skeptics going at each other, but the supporters have so much more data on their side than they used to. And that's all because this information has slowly come forward on the internet. On my blog, what I've tried to do is when this information has become available to write it up and then present in an easy format the scientific evidence. I mean, most of you probably don't know, but there's an experiment called the Ganzfeld that's been going on for about 30 years. It was started by Charles Honorton, and of course, a skeptic right by his side, Ray Hyman, questioning every single bit of it. Well, what about fingerprints on the, it gets really imaginative and creative on the skeptic side as to what they think might possibly go wrong. But anyway, these experiments have been going on for about 30 years, and the results are certainly credible by any sane scientific standard. Telepathy has been scientifically proven to exist, but you would never know that from the mainstream. However, we have the internet now, and this information is coming around the edges. And as I was saying, I'm trying to pull this information together on my blog and present it in a form that anybody can look at and read. And you can link to the studies now so people can go back to primary sources and see, yes, this is real. As people have been sharing this information, something interesting has happened that I've never seen before, which is it seems like the world's intellectual elite has grabbed onto this, and they are starting to push it forward. On the internet, they can be a little bit anonymous, which allows them to argue without fear for their position. And this is where we finally get to TED, because the story wasn't about TED and TED's response, because in my opinion, this was typical skeptical stuff. You could see it all the time. It's, there's this whole history of this type of behavior. But what was so different about it when they took down the Rupert Sheldrake video was that the proponent side was really prepared and ready to do battle intellectually. And they absolutely pushed that home. I have, in the past, 5 years ago, I would get on a comment thread and I would be absolutely swarmed by skeptics. And in this particular situation, the skeptics were swarmed by the proponents on this comment thread. And I think that scared the people at TED. I think they misread exactly how fast things are changing and how much it's changing. Because this is a huge change in Western culture. It is a steamroller going along, and TED had the unfortunate mistake of getting in front of it and getting kind of crushed by it. Everything they did seemed like it was a measure of panic, because there were so many decisions they made that would have been easy otherwise. I mean, let's say, how hard would it have been to just leave the videos up, let this program here in West Hollywood continue, and then just let it go? Because these things will eventually die into the background. The only thing that stays on the internet are cute and humorous pictures of cats and babies. This would eventually die down, and all they had to do was let that happen. But I think they panicked and started to hold tighter and tighter. And this is what created such a difficult situation for them, because first of all, this got drawn out over a very long period and drew an enormous amount of interest. And by the time they took down TEDx West Hollywood, it was almost like they were trying to create this huge drama out of it. I mean, if they had done this intentionally, they could not have done a better job of drawing in the opposition, because everybody came out for this. On the comment threads, I recognized many of the people because I've been on the forums, and some of them have commented on my blogs. It was full of PhDs. Even Brian Josephson, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, got on there. And these people really know their stuff. They're incredibly well informed. They, I think, are the leading edge of this steamroller forcing the change. And this is, I think, very threatening to the scientific establishment because they are getting pushed from below in a direction they really don't want to go. You know, it's materialism versus dualism. You know, the idea that the world is a giant mechanism versus the idea that the world is a giant thought. And the giant thought is winning with science. So what do we learn from this? Well, first of all, because they panicked, they scored a tactical victory. They did take down TEDx West Hollywood, and they did take down the 2 speeches. But I think strategically, they lost tremendously. This cannot have been terribly good for their reputation. And also, this was tremendously beneficial for us. I have nothing but gratitude for TED. I love them. Without them, I would not be speaking here today. They are my best friends. So what TED did was help galvanize the community, and this is something that I was right in the middle of and enjoying every bit of it. Because even before we got to the incident with TEDx West Hollywood, there were something like 30 blogs covering this, including some of the heavyweights in the field. There's one called The Daily Grail and Reality Sandwich. There's several blogs that help spread the word. But also beyond that, a lot of personal blogs carried the message as well and created a lot of, I would guess, excitement over this. And a lot of people were able to make a lot of new connections, including me. I got to meet a lot of people that I never would have, I just never would have met any other way. And what this demonstrates is that the internet has sped it all up by an immense degree. It's exponential because the pressure on the old system has built to an enormous degree. Now, one of the visuals I use for this is that this is like a large river building up behind a shaky dam. Downstream, you're not going to see much for a while as the old guard holds everything back and holds tighter and tighter to keep the new ideas out. But the water is building up behind this dam, and it's doing this on a regular basis like clockwork. Larry Dossie was sharing with me this morning that 30 years ago they had the word health nut. And all of this stuff is now mainstream in medicine, and they're teaching some of the alternative things. This is a train that's not going to stop. So we have this big river building up behind this shaky dam. And like I said, you're not going to see a lot coming downstream, but when this starts to really crack, which I think is probably going to be within the next 10 years or so, it's going to completely go. And you're going to find a lot of careers getting born out of this, and a lot of them fading into obscurity. Now, naturally, this would be very threatening to some people, and very awakening to others. But that's the message here. This is not about TED. TED is just a litmus test of what's happening, and it's a demonstration of the power of the internet and what it's been able to do to bring the people together who were basically scattered literally all over the world. When TEDx was taken down, they got donations from Australia, Britain, Canada, of course the United States, Slovenia. Somebody from Slovenia donated. And a tremendous amount of just support from people. thanking them for going forward and thanking them for everything that they'd done. And it's an amazing journey. I'm really happy to be part of it. And I hope all of you have the opportunity to get out there and do a little bit yourself and just see how powerful and uplifting this whole thing is. Thank you.